The Richards sisters thought they were untouchable, but the paper trail never lies, and their kingdom of glass is finally shattering into a million pieces. For 2 decades, Elena and Clarissa Richards built a massive empire on a foundation of absolute deception, and the receipts are finally here to prove it. They walked the red carpets and signed multi-million-dollar deals while their actual bank accounts were screaming for help and their businesses were rotting from the inside out. The truth is finally out, and the Richards sisters are currently in a state of total career meltdown that they will never recover from. The forensic audit of the Richards sisters' family trust has uncovered the dark reality of their systematic corporate shelf-filling scheme, and it is much worse than anyone ever imagined. This was not just a business mistake or a bad year in the markets, because this was a calculated and cold-blooded plot to defraud investors and keep their failing brands on life support. This is the high-stakes breakdown of how the most famous sisters in the industry cooked the books until the entire kitchen caught fire. The story starts with the discovery of a hidden ledger tucked away in a dormant shell company filing that the sisters thought was buried forever. This ledger was the smoking gun that the forensic team needed to tear down the entire facade of success they had been projecting to the world. It showed that as early as 2014, the Richards sisters were already deep in the red and facing total financial collapse. They were losing millions of dollars on their fashion and beauty lines every single quarter, but they could not let the world or their partners know the truth. If the major brands knew the sisters were insolvent, they would have pulled the plug on every single contract immediately. To prevent this, the sisters created a massive network of secret entities that existed for only one reason, and that reason was to buy their own unsold products. This is what the industry calls shelf filling, and it is a massive financial crime when it is used to trick corporate partners and investors. The contract proves that the sisters were required to maintain a certain level of success to keep their massive bonuses, and when they could not meet those goals, they simply manufactured the success themselves using stolen money. The audit shows that the Richards sisters used the family trust to funnel money into a company called Silver Leaf Acquisitions, which looked like an independent partner on paper. In reality, Silver Leaf was just a mailbox and a tax haven that was controlled by the sisters and their closest associates. The receipts show that every time sales started to dip, the family trust would send a massive wire transfer to the Silver Leaf accounts. Then, Silver Leaf would turn around and place a massive order for hundreds of thousands of units of Richards beauty products to make it look like demand was skyrocketing. To the outside world, it looked like the sisters were selling out of every product they launched in record time, but the reality was much darker and more desperate. These products were never going to actual customers because they were being shipped to secret warehouses in rural areas where they sat and rotted in the dark. The sisters were literally paying for their own products using money that belonged to their shareholders just to keep their valuation high and their reputation intact. The depth of this deception is truly staggering when you look at the specific numbers found in the leaked files from the trust. In 2016 alone, the Richards sisters fabricated over $40 million in fake sales through this illegal shelf-filling method. This fake growth allowed them to secure a $60 million partnership with a global retail giant that believed they were getting into business with a powerhouse brand. Instead, that retailer was being dragged into a sinking ship by 2 people who cared more about their image than the law. The audit proves that the sisters knew they were lying every step of the way because they held secret meetings to discuss which shell company would buy the next batch of inventory. They were playing a high-stakes game of musical chairs with their own debt, and they were losing badly. The problem with shelf filling is that eventually you run out of places to hide the boxes, and you run out of money to keep the lie going. That the financial fraud was only the beginning of the Richards sisters' downfall, because the audit also looked into the moral turpitude triggers in their contracts. Every major deal the sisters signed contained a legal clause that allowed a brand to cancel the agreement if the celebrity did anything to ruin their reputation. The Richards sisters were living a double life that would have triggered these clauses instantly if the truth ever got out to the public. They were involved in high-stakes gambling and secret legal battles that would have ended their career in an instant if they were made public. By faking their financial health, they were able to stay in power and keep their dark secrets buried under a mountain of fake profits. They used the money they stole from investors to pay off people who knew too much about their private lives and their illegal activities. The hero of this story is the lead auditor, who refused to be intimidated by the massive Richards legal team that tried to shut down the investigation. For months, the sisters tried to block access to the family trust records by claiming the documents were protected by privacy laws and had nothing to do with their business. But the auditor found a massive loophole in the corporate structure that allowed them to pierce the veil and see what was really happening. When the files were finally opened, the truth was even worse than anyone in the industry had imagined. The ledger entries showed that the sisters were using the trust as a personal piggy bank to fund their private jets and luxury mansions, while their actual employees were going unpaid for months at a time. The truth is, the Richards sisters cared more about their social standing than the hard-working people who built their company. They were willing to burn every bridge and destroy every life around them just to keep the cameras flashing on the red carpet. The specific brand deals that are now collapsing are the final nail in the coffin for the Richards legacy. Global Beauty Group has already filed a massive lawsuit for $100 million in damages against the sisters. They claim the Richards sisters used fraudulent data and fake sales reports to induce them into a contract that never should have existed. The legal filings show that the sisters provided forged bank statements and fake inventory reports during the high-level negotiation phase of the deal. This is not a matter of opinion or a rumor, because the hard evidence is right there in the court documents for everyone to see. The sisters were caught red-handed trying to scam one of the biggest companies in the world, and now they're paying the ultimate price. As a result, every single one of their active partnerships is being terminated with cause, and their names are being stripped from every product line in the world. The transition from power to total disgrace has been swift, and it has been absolutely brutal for the sisters to witness. Just last month, Elena and Clarissa were posting on social media about their new private jet and their luxury vacations. Today, the receipts show that the jet was never even theirs, because it was leased through another shell company that is now being seized by creditors. The sisters are facing a mountain of legal trouble that they cannot talk their way out of, no matter how many PR firms they hire. The whistleblower who leaked the ledger has also provided hours of recorded phone calls that are currently being reviewed by the authorities. In these calls, the sisters can be heard laughing about how easy it was to trick their investors and their fans. They thought they were the smartest people in the room, but they forgot that numbers don't have a sense of humor, and they never forget a debt that is owed. The impact of this massive scandal is being felt across the entire celebrity industry, and it is changing how brand deals are done forever. Other celebrities who used similar tactics are now scrambling to clean up their own books before the auditors come for them too. But the Richards sisters are the ones who are taking the full force of the blow, because they were the ones who perfected the scam. The audit proves that they intentionally misled the public and their partners for 20 years of constant lying. This was a long con that finally reached its expiration date, and now the sisters have nowhere left to hide. The moral turpitude they fought so hard to avoid are now being pulled by every company they ever touched in their entire career. Their reputation is not just damaged, it is completely and utterly extinct. One of the most shocking parts of the audit is the scene-by-scene breakdown of their last major product launch that happened last summer. The sisters claimed they sold out of their entire inventory in 5 minutes, and they posted fake screenshots of their website crashing from the traffic. The warehouse logs tell a very different story, because they show that not a single box actually left the building on the day of the launch. Instead, the entire stock was moved to a storage facility owned by a Richards family member in the middle of the night. They created a fake shortage to drive up demand, and then they sold the rest of the stock to their own shell companies to make the numbers look good. It was a classic Ponzi scheme dressed up in a designer outfit and marketed to young fans who didn't know any better. The sisters were not selling beauty products, they were selling a fantasy that didn't exist in the real world. The legal battle is only going to get more intense from here, as the federal government has opened its own investigation into the Richards sisters' family trust. They are looking at serious tax evasion and wire fraud charges that could carry heavy prison sentences for both sisters. The sisters are currently hunkered down in their mansion while their lawyers try to find a way to save what is left of their lives. But there is no way out when the receipts are this clear and the evidence is this overwhelming. Every email and every text message has been cataloged and turned over to the federal authorities by the whistleblower. The truth is finally out, and it is uglier than anyone could have guessed when they were looking at the sisters on TV. The sisters who once ruled the world are now the most hated and mocked figures in the entire business world. The Richards sisters had every opportunity to do things the right way and build a real legacy for their family. They had the fame and the platform and the money to build something that actually mattered to people. Instead, they chose the path of deception because they were addicted to the high of being the biggest stars in the room at all times. They let their massive egos drive them into a financial hole so deep that they had to commit serious crimes just to stay level with their peers. The auditor who uncovered the fraud has become a symbol of integrity in an industry that is often filled with shadows and lies. The hero in this story is the truth itself because it finally caught up to the people who thought they were above the law. The Richards sisters' empire was nothing but a house of cards, and the audit was the wind that finally knocked it all down to the ground. As the legal proceedings continue to unfold, the full extent of the damage to the industry is becoming clear to everyone. Thousands of small investors who put their life savings into the Richards brands have lost everything because of this scam. These people believed in the sisters and their message, but they were repaid with lies and empty promises. The Richards sisters did not care who they hurt or whose lives they ruined, as long as they could keep up their fake appearances. They were perfectly comfortable with watching other people suffer while they spent money that did not belong to them on jewelry and cars. This is the definition of a total career meltdown, and it is entirely self-inflicted by their own greed. The sisters are not victims of a bad economy because they are the villains of their own story. The final reports from the audit team indicate that there is virtually nothing left of the original Richards fortune. The money has been drained by massive legal fees and the total collapse of their shell company network across the globe. The assets they claim to own are actually owned by banks and creditors who are now lining up in court to take their share. The Richards sisters are facing a future of total obscurity and serious legal consequences that could last for the rest of their lives. The brand deals are gone, and the fame is turning into a permanent stain on their family name. This is the true cost of building a life on a foundation of hidden ledgers and corporate shelf filling. The world is watching the Richards sisters fall in real time, and for once, there is no filter or PR team to hide the truth from the public eye. The truth is that the Richards sisters were never the business geniuses they claimed to be in all of those interviews. They were just very good at moving money from one pocket to another while everyone else was looking at the shiny objects they held up. The audit has stripped away the glamour and revealed the cold, hard facts of their criminal operation. They used the family trust to try and hide their tracks, but they left a trail of digital breadcrumbs that led straight to their front door. The receipts are undeniable, and the contract violations are absolute in every sense of the word. The Richards sisters are now a cautionary tale for anyone who thinks they can cheat the system and get away with it forever. The game is over, and the scoreboard shows that they lost everything they ever worked for because they could not stop lying. The meltdown is being televised in real time as more details of the fraud are released to the news every single day. The public is seeing the Richards sisters for who they really are, and the reaction is one of total and complete disgust across the board. There is zero sympathy for people who stole from their partners and lied to their fans for 20 years straight. The sisters are being forced to face the music, and it is a song they never wanted to hear played in public. The legal teams for the major brands are not backing down, and they are demanding every single penny back from the sisters. The Richards sisters are being sued into the ground, and there is no one left in the industry to bail them out this time. They burned every bridge they ever crossed, and now they are trapped on a burning island that they built with their own hands. The evidence of the shelf-filling scheme is so overwhelming that it will likely be used in business textbooks for decades to come as a warning. It is a perfect example of how corporate greed can blind people to the inevitable consequences of their own actions and choices. The Richards sisters thought they could keep the cycle going forever, but they simply ran out of room to maneuver in the real world. The moral turpitude they tried to hide is now the very thing that is ending their careers and their social lives. Every lie they told was a debt that eventually came due with massive interest that they could not pay. The auditor who stood up to them is the only one walking away from this mess with their reputation intact and their head held high. The Richards sisters are a warning to the world that the truth always wins in the end, no matter how much money you have. The final nail in the coffin was the discovery of the sisters' secret offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. These accounts were used to hide the last of the cash before the audit team could find it and seize it for the creditors. But the forensic team was one step ahead of them, and they froze the funds before they could be moved to another hidden location. The Richards sisters are now completely broke, and they are facing the reality of a life without the luxuries they stole from other people. The career meltdown is complete, and there is absolutely no coming back from a scandal of this magnitude. The receipts show the truth, and the truth is that the Richards sisters were the architects of their own destruction from day one. The cost of their lies was everything they ever had, and they are finally paying the price in full to the public. The Richards sisters' empire is officially dead, and the only thing left is the long paper trail of their many crimes and deceptions. Their legacy is not of fashion or beauty or success, but one of systematic fraud and total failure on a global scale. The Richards sisters have no one to blame but themselves for the total collapse of their lives and their reputations. The truth is finally out for everyone to see, and it is never going to go back into the shadows where they kept it. They will be remembered as the sisters who lied to the world until the world finally stopped listening and started looking at the receipts. The Richards sisters are gone, and they are never coming back to the spotlight they loved so much. The cost of the lie was their entire existence, and the audit proved that they were never worth the price of admission.